Hi, Jamie McIntyre here on behalf of Australian National Review. I'd like to do some video posts for everyone to keep you updated on some of the important topics that are happening around the world right now. Of course, it's hard to get away from the coronavirus. So for those Australian readers or anywhere, but in Victoria, Melbourne, we've had reported 75 new cases today of the coronavirus, 45 yesterday. And wow, is this a second wave and blah, 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 and all the scaremongering you notice it goes on by the mainstream media. I don't know. I believe very much in common sense, despite the fact it's very uncommon. So let's actually check out whether we should actually, folks, be really scared of 75 new identified cases of the coronavirus in Victoria today. And no doubt this will be used by an excuse by our Queensland Premier. I'm shooting this video right now from the Gold Coast, Australia, a city that relies on tourism and our state borders being opened. But because it's predominantly a Liberal voting city, our Premier is Labor, and she probably doesn't care if most of the Gold Coast goes bankrupt. I think there's another topic on this. I think there's a strong push by those who are using the global warming scam, the coronavirus scam, and the Black Lives Matter scam. It's the same people and it's the same agenda. A socialist new world world government, which the UN's been pushing for some time, and which is going to be handed over and pretty much run by China, which, as we know, is a communist regime. So that's the future we want to look forward to, a totalitarian future, and live how the Chinese have to live. Well, then by all means, don't do any research into what's going on right now. But the point I was trying to highlight there, in order to have that occur, they really have to destroy or limit the power of entrepreneurs. See, most of the damage that's being caused to the economy by committing economic suicide, the damage is predominantly caused, not just employees obviously suffer loss of jobs, but the employer, the small businesses predominantly. They're the ones that are suffering. Because if you force them to have to take government handouts, that it's much easier to control and get the control over the world. And those elite few people on this planet that have a certain agenda, which you or I may not agree with, if we're into democracy and defending human rights and freedoms and public institutions that you can rely on and trust you work for us as public servants, are servants to us, the public, then we don't support socialism, communism, totalitarianism. So back to my point, 75 cases of coronavirus in Victoria today. Should be too worried about this. Let me highlight a few facts for you, folks, if you're not already aware of this. Firstly, who cares? Should you be scared of the fact there's 75 new cases identified in Victoria? I would say, who cares? Now, this means I don't care that we could have people get sick or whatever. No, but who cares? How many cases today in Victoria of people getting the flu? You can't tell me that, can you? I'm suggesting to you it's going to be a lot more than 75. How many cases today of people spreading the flu to other Victorians? You can't tell me that because it's not in the news. It's going to be a lot more than 75. So why aren't we scared about that? Why don't we know about that? How many people died of the flu last year in Australia, folks? 900. 900. How many died of the coronavirus in Australia so far? Okay, well, let's check that out, shall we? According to the mainstream media, now, if you take any of your conspiracy theories, news from mainstream media, then you have to understand you're being lied to. When does the mainstream media lie to you? All the time. A bit like governments. How often do the governments lie to you? They lie to you all the time. We know that to be true. We grew up knowing, don't believe everything that's written in the newspaper, yet we tend to believe too much that's written in the newspaper. Now, my point I'm trying to make without, being seen as I don't care, it's that I care deeply for the truth, and so should you. And I'm sure that's why you follow Australian National Review, because you want an independent news source that highlights various views and doesn't go along with the scripted narrative pushed by George Soros and co, which is pushed through the mainstream media, sadly. So the point being, we've only had 104 deaths in Australia of the coronavirus. That's what we're told by the media. But is that actually true? They continue. That is a lie. You realize that? We've had 104 deaths of people that have died with the coronavirus. or allegedly with the coronavirus. Now, first of all, you must understand this. The coronavirus testing is hopelessly inaccurate. There's some estimates between 50 and 80% inaccuracy. So just because we had 75 cases of coronavirus in Victoria today, first of all, how many of them are actually accurate? Many of them are not accurate. So false positive test is very common. So that's the first issue you have to look at. And two, they do, so what? It's already coming out now. They're discovering that this particular coronavirus has been around for over a year. And the spike in high flu deaths last year was in fact the coronavirus. And that most of society already, particularly in Europe, has over 30% transmission, that already many have herd immunity. Now, you're going to see, if you don't believe that now, I'm not saying this, is not me saying this, is doctors and scientists that have done some studies of saying it. So listen to them, and we'll release some articles on this, but this is public verifiable information. We don't like to support conspiracy theories in Australian National Review. I will leave that to mainstream media. Anything we talk about, if it's speculation, we'll highlight its speculation. Otherwise, we'll highlight its publicly verifiable information. You just have to do the research. So the idea that the coronavirus is novel is nonsense. Coronaviruses have been around for a very long time. And they haven't come up, they've had 20, 30 years to come up with the vaccine for coronavirus. They haven't yet. So why do you think all of a sudden they're going to be able to produce one that's effective now? You're kidding, but that's another whole issue. The point being, the tests are highly inaccurate, so you can't trust them. And two, of course, there'll be an increase of coronavirus positive tests in Victoria because they've increased the amount of people they're testing. You know, this is third grade basic mathematics. So does that mean there's any really fear for concern? And two, 99.75% of people that get the coronavirus are not affected. It doesn't hurt you. The only people, the coronavirus, first of all, here's fact. The coronavirus is not a pandemic. Fact number one, it is not a pandemic. The only way they got this deemed to be a pandemic is Gates and the corrupt WHO had the definitions, the drug companies, vaccine makers, had since 2010, the definition change of what is a pandemic. That way, when they try this little scam again, which they did in 2020, of hyping a typical flu strain into a pandemic, they'd be able to get away with it. Because you're probably not aware, in 2010, go check this public and verifiable information, a motion passed in European Parliament, is that they highlighted very clearly in a motion to the European Parliament that the drug companies, i.e. vaccine makers, have unhealthy levels of influence over WHO, the World Health Authority, Health Organization, and they tried to hype a normal flu strain out of South America into a pandemic. Now, why would they want to do that? Because you have to understand this scam has already fleeced and already got, tens of billions of dollars. And now I saw the figure only yesterday, I think it's up to $300 billion. Who is now saying that's what they need. They're going around the governments and rape and pillage our taxpayers' money for this scam. Hundreds of billions of dollars, folks. While you're trying to figure out at home whether this is a scam or not, they've already scammed you via your governments. They're taking your taxpayer money and they're going to take more of it. More of it. How do they get it? There's pre-existing contracts in place with all governments, all members of WHO, most of the governments in the world, that once something's deemed a pandemic, they have to hand over billions from their health budget to, guess who, drug companies, vaccine makers, for medical supplies, grants, research, vaccines, and you name it. They've already taken your money and they're going to take some more. So why are you still trying to figure out, is this a scam? The coronavirus has already scammed you. They've scammed our governments. They scammed our governments by giving falsified data, falsified modeling that they needed to commit economic suicide and lock down our economies. And because this was so bad, it's going to kill so many people. Yeah, guess what? Even before they did that, you can go and study publicly verifiable information that the governments already knew. That the coronavirus was already downgraded from a highly infectious disease of concern, a public health concern, to downgrade it to no longer a public health concern and no longer highly infectious. Before they did the lockdowns, folks, the transmission rate in Australia was already below 1, which is where they need to get at that so it doesn't spread before the lockdowns. See, there's going to be class actions go against the governments around the world, and I dare say against Gates, who funded the most falsified modeling, who owns most of the vaccine investments on the planet, and stands to make, we're talking a potential $1 trillion gain for this industry. They already make half a trillion a year, the vaccine industry, 60 billion a year in vaccine sales, another $500 million a year from the associated products, medical products they sell to treat the illnesses created by these vaccines. So we're talking a $500 billion a year industry at very high profit margins. They could get that to $1 trillion because whoever comes out with the coronavirus vaccine. Now, by the way, if you think there's going to be a safe coronavirus vaccine that's rushed to market, then you are deluded. If you're thinking about taking a coronavirus vaccine, I would say to you very quickly. Now, I get invited to speak with doctors and scientists on these topics, by the way. So I'm not a doctor, but the reason I know so much about this is I listen to independent doctors and scientists that have sent a lot of information over the last 6 years to ANR that have highlighted the fraud of the vaccine industry and have asked us explicitly to try and expose that. And we have. So I'm well educated and researched in this area, but the people I actually listen to are far more well researched and educated in this area. But, in case you doubt that, there's $1 million challenge out there by myself, Robert De Niro, the actor, and also Robert Kennedy Jr., the nephew of John F. K., someone to look up to greatly. And we hope to have speak at a Freedom of Speech Summit in Australia next year, whenever we're allowed to have people fly into our country again. Is also put 100,000 up for basically this, for anyone that can prove vaccines are safe and effective. So I put up $1 million. And that bet still stands. So I'm actually someone who has conviction and believe in what I'm saying, unlike TV presenters paid to read a script, etc. So the point being, folks, the coronavirus is a scam, whether you like it or not. There's publicly verifiable information to do that. We never needed to commit economic suicide. That's for political purposes. Why that's done, part of it's done by they want to get rid of Trump in America, so that's why they want lockdowns. If you doubt that, the Democrats are being caught. You can even publicly verify and see this. Pushing and requesting governors keep the lockdowns to after the November election so that way they can get rid of Trump. They don't want the restrictions removed. This is designed as part of one world takeover to get rid of the Trump presidency. Now, whether you like Donald Trump or not, don't like his hair, don't like his personality, I would say to people, I think we need to become a little bit more mature and stop voting on personality politics and actually vote on what really matters. So the coronavirus, whether you like it or not, unfortunately is a scam. We were scammed. Our governments were scammed into lockdowns. We should have never locked down. That some of the countries had the most success in dealing with the coronavirus, such as Taiwan, didn't do lockdowns. So the point is, it doesn't mean the coronavirus isn't deadly. The question you must ask, though, is deadly compared to what? Now, if you ask that question, well, it's not. I said months ago, and some people were outraged when I said this won't even be as bad as a bad flu. Well, guess what? That's now publicly proven. It's not even as bad as a bad flu. You talk to a lot of smart doctors and scientists, they're just shaking their head going, many of them are quitting the industry because they realize just how corrupt this is. There is no reason for us to be worrying about the 75 cases in Victoria today. Now, half of them are probably not accurate, okay? And two, who cares they are? 99.75% of people are not going to be affected. Now, the only people that will be affected are the people that are already dying. For the coronavirus to kill you, pretty much already have to be sadly dying. So if you die, then you'd still most likely die of the coronavirus, or with the coronavirus, not of it. Makes sense? Because why would you blame the coronavirus? Here's my challenge to the world. Show me. What do you think the statistics would be? What percentage of people that have been listed as dying of the coronavirus are actually died of the coronavirus? And what percentage of, I can tell you now, I'll give you a clue. 88% of people, according to National Health Institute in Italy, you can publicly verify this, did not die of the coronavirus, died with it. They had 2, 3, 4 comorbidities, already were dying. The 12%, only 12% of the number, so when they say 130,000 people in America, only about 12%, or actually less than that, have actually died of the coronavirus. Now, if we were to investigate that further, how many of those removed the ones that were vaccinated with the new flu vaccine before their death? I'm not saying there's a linkage there, but just remove those ones. Then the number will drop even lower. And then let's remove the ones that were still sick and died of other causes. And I'm going to tell you the amount of people that have died, that you're being told to die of the coronavirus, is between about 1% and 5% of the people that have. Now look at Russia as an example. It's pretty much the same amount of people in Russia have tested positive to the coronavirus as America. Russia has about 5,000 deaths. America, 130,000. Interesting. Take away about 90% of that, you're down to 13,000. Go to 5%, you're down to about 6,500. The real deaths in America is about 6,500. Now, some people might say Russia's understating the deaths. Yeah, maybe. But not by 125,000 people. They can't hide that many people that have died. So what I'm telling you, folks, if you don't believe this, it's public and verifiable information. You have to stop accepting and that what they tell you mainstream media has any element of truth. They lie to you every day by saying 104 people have died of the coronavirus in Australia. False. Died with it. How many of those actually died solely from the coronavirus? Well, no one knows because no one's actually done the assessment, but I'm willing to bet less than a dozen. And most of those are on a cruise ship and a confined space where it spreads. Make sense? So we're going to talk a little bit more about that, but my point being right now that the idea that we should be incited into fear, no one cares how many people got the flu today in Victoria or anywhere. No one cares how many people that the flu's been passed on to. And the flu is far more deadly than the coronavirus, which has been around for a year, folks, and most of it's already worked out. What are we so scared of? I mean, it's an embarrassment to humanity that we're so scared of this. Now, the only people that have to be concerned is the people already dying. And sadly, if you're already dying, you are already dying. We can isolate and protect those people, but instead of doing that, we neglected the elderly. And I just don't think that shows any compassion. This is nothing about a flu, a corona flu. This is about something else. And if you don't realize that yet, I'm going to challenge you, do the world a favor and do some research. Thank you. On behalf of Australian National Review, we appreciate your support. Spread it far and wide. We need donations, etc., to help fund our work at Australian National Review. But we need the truth to get out there. We need common sense, and we need to people start talking the facts and stop believing the lies on the mainstream media. Talk to you tomorrow.